Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. Well, happy holidays and a happy new year. Have a special present for you. My guest this episode is Jeff Schwartz. He's a lifelong Yankee fan who has gone to a number of Yankee fantasy camps, and he has a ton of great stories from Billy Martin to El Duque, so let's bring him on. Hey, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey, welcome. Glad to be here. I'm very flattered that I was invited to this show. Big Yankee fan, obviously, a long time. Started out with my dad, who was brought up on 161st Street and Audubon Avenue and sold beer and peanuts at Yankee Stadium from 1924 until 1930. And then he actually sold for the Giants at the Polo Grounds on Sundays, sold for the Yankees on Saturdays. But when the Giants left in '57, that was it for him. And we had a rule in our household. There was no Mets, no Jets, no Nets.
That was perfect to me. So you seem like you're a big Yankee fan, and you've been to a lot of these fantasy camps, which, it's been a little quiet this past 2 years with the COVID stuff. But again, where fans like yourself can go down to Florida and now rub elbows and play with some of your, favorite players.
Yeah, I was very lucky because when I started, I went to my first one in 1997. So a lot of the guys there are no longer with us. I mean, you had at that camp, you had Hoyt Wilhelm there, Johnny Blanchard, Jim Spencer, may he rest in peace. Hector Lopez is still alive. Pepitone was there. Tom Tresh, Stan Bonson. I mean, it was really an amazing experience to see those guys because, I was a kid. I went to my first game in 1957 when I was 4 years old. So, and then we were Yankee fans ever since. And obviously, one of the great things that happened there was, during the dark days of the Yankees, to me, in my generation, was in the mid 60s when CBS bought them and they just fell apart. But the guy that was my shining light, which was Roy White, who was my favorite Yankee, happened to be my coach every year that I went to fantasy camp. And he was because in those years, I mean, there was not a lot to cheer about. I mean, they were just really, it was tough to watch sometimes, but I stuck with them. But Roy White was my absolute favorite. And actually, you could pick any number you wanted. My first year, I took number 1 for Billy Martin because I had a great experience with him years before. He had just been fired for punching the marshmallow salesman out in the elevator in Minneapolis. And I lived in Manhattan. I was living on 89th and York Avenue. I had an apartment there. And I used to go to Elaine's once in a while. So I was in Elaine's and I was sitting at the bar, and all of a sudden, who sits down next to me but Billy Martin with his soon-to-be wife, Jill. He was already divorced. And I was like, I said, "Can I please buy you a drink, Mr. Martin?" He says, "Call me Billy." And he put a 50 on the counter and he said, "Give the kid whatever he wants."
Wow.
And he proceeded to tell me stories, and we spent the entire evening together. I'm not much of a drinker, but I tried to be a big shot, and my big mistake was trying to keep up with him, which was a mistake. And I was paralyzed in a couple of hours, and I only lived like 3 blocks away. And Billy basically carried me to my apartment with his girlfriend, with Jill. And he wrote a note to me, and he said he had a Western wear store on Madison Avenue and like 79th Street, Billy Martin's Western wear. And he said, "Do me a favor." He says, "Do yourself a favor, kid. Take this card, bring it over there, and pick yourself out of Stetson on me." So here it is.
Nice.
I still have it.
Wow.
And I only wish that I had been able to get him to sign it, because obviously the next time I saw him was right after he actually passed away, and they had his funeral. His viewing was at the I.J. Morris funeral home on 87th and Madison. And I went to his viewing, and that's the last time I saw him. But it was a great night, probably one of the highlights of my life. The first time I was at fantasy camp, I took number 1 for Billy Martin. And then my second fantasy camp, I took number 6 for Roy White. And I always thought that I always wondered why the Yankees didn't retire his number along with Torrey, because I think that both of them had amazing influences on the Yankee, and why Roy White's number was not retired with all he did for the Yankees was always beyond me. It infuriates me almost as much as not having not having Bernie Williams in the core five instead of the core four, because to me, without Bernie, those championships don't happen. And I always the core four always kind of like pissed me off.
So you said you've been to 5 of these camps. So you went
Yes.
in a
Yeah,
row
yeah.
or like took breaks?
I took breaks. I usually made them sort of monumental things. I did it the first time I did it when I had left the company that I had been with for a long time, and my wife gave it to me as a celebratory thing. And then I did it again when my mother had passed away, and I had worked really hard to keep her around and things like that. And then I did it again on my one more time. I forgot what reason was. And then I did it on my 60th birthday, and then I did it on my 65th birthday. And what was really funny is that when I was up at bat and I was wearing number 60 on my 60th birthday, and they had minor league umps there. And so when I got up to bat, the ump said, timeout. I said, yeah. He says, I got a question for you. I said, what is it? He goes, you know what? I'm looking around here and I see a lot of number 3s, a lot of number 2s, a lot of number 5s, a lot of number 7s, 44s, things like that. I said, who the hell is number 60? I said, me. I said, for my 60th birthday. He said, I love it. But and then later on in the camp, I met more contemporary Yankees. Shane Spencer was one of my coaches, was a great guy, and a lot of people don't realize that he kind of like put Jeter into a situation that was unbelievable when, they were playing the A's and Shane was playing right field and he missed the cutoff man, and Jeter ventured out into the first baseline and got the ball and then shoveled it over to Posada, and they got Jeremy Giambi out at the plate. But if Shane Spencer hadn't missed the cutoff man, that play may not have happened. So that was kind of funny. And Shane's a great guy, and there was just all kinds of great characters there. Pepitone was there for a while, but for some reason he didn't come anymore. But when he and Mickey Rivers did Kangaroo Court, it was like unbelievable between the two of them. I mean, it was nuts. And I'll never forget, they would fine you every morning for doing something stupid. If you missed your batting, if you left your hat in the dugout, if you did this, if you didn't wear black spikes, if you didn't do this, they would fine you. So they're collecting these fines like crazy. And so they went to Pepitone and they said, Joe, aren't you giving this stuff to a charity? And Joe said, oh, yeah. We have a great charity. He said, what's the charity this year, Joe? He goes, he says, I'm giving all the money that we have to the families of the unknown soldier. So, but I also had Catfish as a coach one year, who was amazing, and Nettles. And this is a great story. I hope I can, clean it up a little bit, but I didn't exactly go down to my first camp in great shape, and I really didn't practice. And you get on that major league field and it's a long throw. I was playing third base and I was like trying to whip it over there, and I'm trying to whip it and I'm trying to throw it hard, and it's going in the dirt, and then it's going over the first baseman's head and stuff like that. And all of a sudden I feel a tap on my shoulder, and I hear, hey, you asshole. Turn around and say, who, me? He says, yeah, you asshole. It was Nettles. So he goes, you know who I am? I said, yeah. He says, do you know how many gold gloves I won? Yeah. He goes, let me ask you something. He said, do you know how long of a throw that is? I said, yeah. He says, do you also know how slow these idiots are that you're playing against? I said, yeah. He goes, here's what you do. Knock the ball down, take your time, take 4 steps to the mound, lob at the first base, and you still got him by 5 steps. And that was great. And then it was really funny, for guys that weren't in shape at all. The day after the first day of fantasy camp, the training room looked like Bellevue on a Friday night. I mean, it was unbelievable. And so I was limping out of the training room, and Hector Lopez, I was having lunch with Hector Lopez, and he has this heavy sort of Hispanic accent. He says, what's the matter, Jeff? I said, oh man, I'm hurting. He goes, Jeff, he says, let me tell you something about Yankee Fantasy Camp. He said, you know what? A lot of these guys come down here, they jog, they lift weights, but they don't play baseball. Baseball, you use moves that you never think you had before, or you get yourself all messed up. He says, so my advice to you, if you want to survive Yankee camp, he says, you start slow and then you taper off.
So yeah, actually, thanks for bringing that. So what's like the whole process in terms of the length you're down there? And is it, do you play games? Is it like a tournament?
Yeah, you play 2 9-inning games a day. You play in the morning. And back then, they never used to play on the big field in Steinbrenner Field. You used to use all the auxiliary fields, and then they changed it and they let you play on the big field too. You had to be very careful and respectful of that field. But what you do is you're already assigned a team. Some guys go in there and they, some guys, I mean, there's a guy named Warren. I can't think of what his last name is. Warren. But he's gone to every fantasy camp since they started, both of them, 2 times a year. I mean, and like he's got like Jeter's locker. I mean, he's got everything going on there. So when you go down there, unless you have a group of guys together, you're assigned on a team. And so you go on the team, and the first day they try you out, they see you, and they'll let you try and pitch, but they don't want you to get hurt. So they'll test you to see you're coming off the mound because they don't want you to blow your arm out, So then you have a practice for a couple hours, and the next day you start. And you start off after breakfast. You play a 9-inning game, and then you have a break at lunch, and then you play another 9-inning games. So I mean, literally, it's a league, and you play 2 9-inning games a day for 4 days. And whoever is ahead of the standings, then everybody gets to play the old Yankees for 2 innings in the big stadium. And the order of which you finish is how you start. And they have the guy that, obviously not Bob Shepard, but I forgot the guy's name that does the PA address now at the Yankees. He comes down there, he announces your name, and they play whatever walk-in music you want to do, and you do all that stuff. But the camaraderie after the game is what really is fun when you're hanging out at the bar with, like, Mickey Rivers is like, he's the best. I mean, Mickey Rivers and you got Tanyan Sturtz, and you've got Shane, and you've got Jeff Nelson is another amazing guy. As a matter of fact, it was really funny. I was up against Jeff Nelson, and I remember I went to an instructional place before, like a couple of months before, where I was taking batting practice for months with a minor league coach locally where I live outside of California. And so he was telling me, he says, Jeff, he says, I don't care what they throw you. He said, never swing at the first pitch. He said, never swing at the first pitch. So I had it together. So I get in the game, and who's up there but Jeff Nelson? And I'm going, oh my God. So he must have seen the terror in my eyes because the first pitch he threw to me had to be like an 86, 87 mile per hour slider. And I went, oh God, because he wasn't messing around. And so anyway, so I said, okay, I'm ready now. And I let the first pitch go. And I don't know if I closed my eyes or whatever it was. And I swung and I hit a line drive over the third baseman's head, and I got a double. Wow. Well, I called timeout, and I brought the ball and I brought it over to Nelson. I said, could you please sign it for me? So he begrudgingly signed the ball for me and gave me like the stare. And then my buddy was up next, and I was standing with Shane Spencer in the dugout. And so Nelson throws him an 87 mile per hour slider, and the guy's looking like this. I'm going to look again. So he started messing around with his glove like this, and Shane Spencer elbows me, says, watch this. I said, okay. So Nelson gets up. He throws this guy a changeup. He thought it was going to come to an 87. I mean, he swung. I mean, the ball went into the mitt like 2 seconds after he swung at it. Mm-hmm. It was hysterical. And then Nelson pointed at me, and he pointed at the guy at bat. He says, you blame that idiot for that pitch, and things like that. But I mean, these guys were great. I mean, also Gossage was there 1 year I was there, and he came into the locker room with Rick Cerrone, and has his head pulled down like this, with that big stash on there. He's looking around the room, and everybody's getting dressed, getting ready for the Yankee game, against the, the greats. And so he says, Cerrone, he said, it looks like we've mistakenly walked into a pussy convention. And so, and he says, any of these guys out here want to, he says, and if I come close to you guys, he says, and you try and rush the mound, Cerrone, tell him how many guys actually get to the mound. So he gets out there, and there was a guy from he was a Rhode Island guy, and he got up at bat. And you know what? As much fun as those guys have, you have to have some sort of respect for these guys. You know what I mean? For what they do. So Gossage throws a pitch, and it's a little bit inside, and his arms and legs are all over the place. So this guy throws his bat down, and he points at him. And Gossage goes, okay. The next pitch he throws probably at 90 miles an hour, like 5 feet over the guy's head. The guy went down like he was shot. And he said, Gossage said to him, he says, now I got your uniform dirty so you look crappy for the pictures after the game.
Do they think these guys like slow the pitches down a little bit?
Well, most of the time, the guys don't pitch. You usually have minor league coaches and stuff like that, and they throw the ball in so you can hit it. They average about like 68, 70 miles per hour, so you can do it like that. But when the Yankee players decide to pitch, you know what, they'll screw around and do some stuff. The guy that was really the most amazing guy was El Duque, was down there. And let me tell you something. I've never seen somebody in shape like that in my life for his age. And one day he was messing around, and he walked like 5 feet or 6 feet behind the mound on the grass, got on his knees, and threw 3 consecutive fastballs straight over the plate from his knees, probably about 85 miles per hour. And even a guy like Oscar Gamble in there was 70, may he rest in peace too, was like 70 something years old. He gets up to batting practice and he hits like 3 out over the right field fence. I mean, we're taking batting practice downstairs, and, you know, we're swinging around, things like that. Some guys are better than others. But even the older guys like Tresh and those guys and things like that were like 67, you know, 65, 70. When they were taking batting practice, it sounded like a cannon was going off when they'd hit the ball. I mean, it's a different sound. It's like my father used to tell me all the time. He says, you know, Jeff, he said, do you know the difference between an amateur fighter and a pro fighter? And I said, what, Dad? He goes, 1 punch. And so that's what those guys hitting the ball was. And it was just amazing to watch these guys, that they're still like great athletes and all like really, really good guys. I mean, the most surreal thing I happened there was I was having breakfast, and it was my birthday. The camp was in November, and it was November 5th was my birthday. And I was sitting having breakfast with Tony Kubek, Don Larson, Frank Howard, Rivers, and things like that. And these guys start singing happy birthday to me. I mean, how great is that? So they all left to go change. And I was sitting with Tony Kubek, and we were talking for a while, and he had to be close to 80 years old at that time. And so we're talking, and I went to go get dressed. And all of a sudden I had this deja vu feeling, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And it just was a strange feeling. And as I went into the locker room and I sat down to get dressed, I realized what it was. Even at 80 years old, his voice hadn't changed. And I didn't realize until afterwards that voice I heard was me as a kid listening to him doing the Game of the Week with Kurt Gowdy, you know, on NBC back in the day. And I was thinking, where had that voice been in my head? And it was that same voice. So the experiences there were unbelievable. You know, I had gone to my wife likes to go to these antique fairs and stuff. So we went to an antique fair, and somehow in Oakland, California, there was an RC Cola can with Chris Chambliss on the can, but it didn't, of course, there was no royalties back there. So his hat was blacked out, and it didn't have a Yankee logo on it, but I got the can, and I knew he was coming to camp. So I brought the can down, the can down there, and I showed it to him. He goes, oh my God. He says, I haven't seen that for a long time. Can I have it? I said, no, you can't have it. I said, but you can sign it. And he signed it for me. And then the last experience I want to tell you, which was great. So I'm playing on one of the auxiliary fields, and this is like probably maybe 2000, maybe 2001, I think it was. And I was going to the bathroom, and I walked through the tunnel in Tampa under the thing, and there was a big BMW parked down there right by the elevator doors that went up to the offices. So I was all by myself, and I'm walking through there, and all of a sudden the elevator doors open up, and it's George Steinbrenner. And he comes walking out, and he says to me, he says, hello, young man. I said, Mr. Steinbrenner, how are you? He goes, are they treating you okay? I said, they're treating me fine. He goes, is there anything that I can do for you? And I said, yes, sign my hat.
Nice.
And here it is. And I've never worn it again since. And that was it. And he was such a nice man. I mean, and he just like, I want to make sure, I appreciate you Yankee fans. And, if there's anything you do, you just let me know, let my assistant know if there's anything I can do to help you. The whole experience there was just, it was amazing. And I would recommend it to anybody that has this on their bucket list.
And how long does the camp last for? Is it a couple of weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
It's a week. It's you get down there. Usually you get down there on either Saturday night or Sunday morning, and then you get yourself ready and things like that. And then sometimes there's a guy named Ron Silver that has a minor league instructor, has a thing called the winning inning that I think he rents the old Philadelphia Phillies training facility in Clearwater. So he'll do a practice session in there a couple of days before, if you want to come in a couple of days before and do that with him. And then generally, Monday in the morning is like sort of like orientation and things like that. They give you the rules, no going naked in the hot tubs, no things like that, whatever, and just being respectful. And believe it or not, they would tell you, say, you know what, you guys are pigs. He says, flush the damn toilets, and stuff like that, whatever. And then the orientation, then you have a little practice session. And then on Tuesdays, the game starts. So you got 2 games Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday, 2 on Thursday, 2 on Friday. Then Saturday morning, you play the Yankees and the old Yankees in the Yankee Stadium. And then they have a farewell banquet afterwards. And then you go home. But one of the things is that one year when I was down, my 60th birthday, I was down there. And so they said, well, we're going to have this auction for charity. We have this memorabilia that we're going to be giving away, this amazing piece of memorabilia. So I've never been very, very lucky. So I bought $25, I bought or $50. I bought 10 tickets. Excuse me, 10 tickets. And so some of these guys down there are real high rollers. You got attorneys, you got big business guys down there. So they're dropping $12, $15, $18, $2,000 on raffle tickets and things like that. And so finally, this little bucket is filled up like this, full of tickets. And so the day before the night before the banquet, they said, you want to buy any more tickets? I said, no, I already bought 10 losing tickets. I said, don't worry about it. I don't need any more. So we go to the banquet. It's time for the drawing. They have a kid, pull the kid from the audience, one of the campers' kids. Yeah, you pick the number out of there. So they pick the number out. They read it off. Jeff Schwartz. I win. And this is what, I don't know if you can see it, but I won a game used signed Mariano Rivera jersey, which was his last year. And I have that frame. So my wife said to me, she goes, well, how are you going to pack that to take it home? I said, if the plane goes down, it's going down with me. I'm carrying this on board. I'm not putting this in my suitcase. And I went back and I came home and I put it under, I had a guy put it under UV glass, and I still have the winning tickets that I kept underneath the frame and things like that. So it was an amazing experience. You have guys down there that just love baseball, and they're the worst athletes in the world, but nobody makes fun of them, and nobody, gives them a hard time. And if you win, you win. If you don't win, you don't win, and things like that. So it's very, very well done. You don't feel, whether you're a really good player or you're a low level player, whereas everybody is treated equally.
Gotcha. So I guess we'll bring on Mariano Rivera to close out the game. So 2 quick questions as a Yankee fan. Obviously, you have all these championships. What's your favorite Yankee team? What year or what squad? what's your favorite Yankee team of all time?
Well, I would have to say probably as a young kid, the 1961 Yankees. When Maris and Mantle were going for Babe Ruth's title, and they beat the San Francisco Giants in the World Series. And then I also think, even though they lost the World Series, I happened to be at the game when George Bush threw out the first ball right after 9/11. And that series, always being a native New Yorker, that series always was very, very special to me. I still have my tickets there. So that 2001 team with Jeter, even though they lost to the Diamondbacks, probably the 2000 to 2001 teams were probably my favorites as a later team.
It's funny you say that, because when I say the same thing. I say my 2 favorites are 96, because at least for me, growing up, it's my first time experiencing it. And I say my second favorite is 2001, even though they lost. That was probably one of the greatest World Series of, just all the dramatics and everything behind it.
Yeah, I you know what? When we went into that stadium that night, it took 2.5, 3 hours to get in there. And, and you're sitting there and all of a sudden you hear chop, 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 chop. And there's two Marine One helicopters circling the field because I guess Bush was on one of them. And so they said if there's a terrorist attack, they didn't know which helicopter to fire at. So they were taking that turn. But the whole night was surreal. And they were saying, is he going to come out by himself? Is he going to come out with Secret Service agents, whatever it was, things like that? Come to find out, the Secret Service guys were all wearing umpire uniforms on the field.
Yeah, quick note. Actually, we had Dale Scott, the umpire, on a year ago, and he umpired the game. And yes, he was in the corridors, and he said yes, all the umpires or the Secret Service people were dressing up like umpires just to be incognito. So, last question here. Obviously, Game 7, must win, do or die. Who are you going to go with, Andy Pettitte or El Duque?
That's a tough one. I would go with Pettitte.
Okay, there's no wrong answer on that one. Yeah, either way.
I mean, I think I would. It's very, very close because, and I'll tell you something. I never met Pettitte, but when you meet El Duque, and I had some good conversations with him, a guy that like floated on a raft from Cuba with his brother to get away from Cuba to get to freedom. I mean, how could you not want a guy like that on the mound that's been through all that stuff? I mean, that's why it's such a tough decision. I mean, he was the nicest guy ever. And like I said, I had to yank my wife away from every woman who was crazy about this guy. I mean, he was like, he would have owned the camp. I mean, he was so charming, handsome guy. But I remember when his brother, because I was living in Ohio at the time, and I watched his brother pitch in the snow against the Indians, and he won that game for the Marlins. I'll never forget, before the beginning of the game, I guess he had never seen snow before, and there's no players on the field, but he's outside and on the field dancing around, looking at the snowflakes coming down. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I met El Duque once actually in Baltimore. Went down there, the Yankees Camp. The odds, yeah, he signed a postcard for me, and he said Orlando Hernandez, El Duque, and he signed very nice, not rushed.
Got him on this. They gave me a 65th birthday bat here, and I have his signature on here too.
Nice.
And they personalized the bat for me with the Jeff Schwartz autograph model bat, and the Yankees gave me this for my birthday, for my 60th birthday. So, anyway.
Hey, Jeff. Well, I appreciate you sharing all these great stories. I mean, you got a treasure trove of different generation of Yankee stories. So I appreciate getting all these stories, and hopefully, you can get to one of those fantasy camps soon. We get over this COVID, and you can be back on the field with some.
I'm done. I retired after my last one. There was a guy down there named Roy Berger, who was a great guy. He's written a bunch of books, and he's an excellent guy. He's a really good guy. He and I both retired at the same time. After the last game, we said, "We're done." I had to have, from camps, I've had to have my ACL replaced. There was an ongoing injury. I had to have my Achilles fixed. I had all kinds of stuff. I'm done. I'm done.
We'll see. I think you got one more left in you.
Maybe. We'll see.
We'll see.
Maybe for my 70th birthday in 2 years.